Welcome to Backstage with Becca B with special guest Brennyn Lark. Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Backstage with Becca B. On this episode, her regional credits include Mary Magdalene in Jesus Christ Superstar and Tzipporah in the world premiere of Prince of Egypt. She also made her Broadway debut as Éponine in Les Miserables and her West End debut as Deena in Dreamgirls. Please welcome Brennyn Lark. How are you? It's been a weird time. I mean, for performers, it's kind of been a heartbreaking time.
Yeah. Whenever somebody asks me how I'm doing, it's such like a layered, loaded question because I'm very much not that person that's like,
Yeah.
Great. I'm not that person. I will just fully, maybe I should get better at this and be more like socially like correct. But it's ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
I think we owe it to ourselves to acknowledge that there are some days that are better than others and some days that are sort of like low points. But I think that's just part of our human experience. And the good news is that it's those lower moments are not permanent.
Exactly.
So that's kind of the more optimistic view of things, I guess. I try to maintain. I don't always succeed, but I try. But I'm all right. Like I said, just navigating through everything the best that I can to the best of my abilities. So,
I mean, I think this moment, like this past year and a half, has taught everyone a lot and has like made everyone a little stronger in a way than before, because we've all been through so much and we've all had to kind of unite in what we've been through. So
yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, if there is something to come out of it, hopefully it is strength and like resilience of like the human spirit and what have you. So that's a beautiful way to put it, Becca. I definitely agree with that. Look at you.
I mean, you have to look at the silver linings.
I agree.
The silver linings are always important. So I was watching videos of you singing and you're incredible. Have you always known that you wanted to be a theater performer?
Thank you. No. Well, I think in the arena of entertainment, because when I was very small, I just wanted to be a pop star. Like I was like, I want a record deal by the time I'm 16. I want to be like one of these Disney kids that gets, like the corresponding like record deal, which is like still some semi-true. Like in terms of my journey now, it's like I would like to continue to be more multifaceted. Like I don't want to just say I'm just a theater performer or I'm just a TV actress or I'm just a singer. I like to sort of do all of those things. So I guess in that vein, I've always grown up being a performer and wanting to create art in that way. And I just had a liking or an affinity to the performing arts from a very young age. And to my parents' dismay, because I'm sure I just would be painfully singing around the house. Like, I'm so sorry about that, guys. Supportive parents, yeah. But I've always sort of, but I also was like that typical kid that just did everything across the board for no reason. Like, why did I need to do like martial arts and like Girl Scouts at the same time and then gymnastics? Like, why? It's just so much. But I definitely did that too. But I'd say, middle school, 6th grade, that was when my parents started getting me involved in more, like I had like a commercial agent, and then I started doing a little bit more like theater, community theater, things of that nature. So
yeah, and you've done a lot. You've done not only theater, but you've also done TV. So you kind of like dived into everything. And I feel like you can definitely get into that like solo artist thing and like become like a super, super well-known solo artist out there with that voice.
You're so sweet. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. Still trying to figure, like, as I said, I'm trying to figure it out, and like I'm just open to all the possibilities. I think we owe ourselves to be open to things instead of just having like a concrete vision, like it has to look like this and it has to be this. I think that's like more of a disservice. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, everything. What was the first show that you saw when you were like, okay, like I want to be on the stage and I want to do that. I want to do what those performers are doing.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. The first Broadway show I ever saw, I was in 3rd grade and I saw Beauty and the Beast. Yeah, I saw Beauty and the Beast. So that was the first show I did see, and I think I loved it, but I don't think the magnitude of what was going on really, I don't know if I fully comprehended, but there are a few little like it was definitely magical to be in the audience for that. But I would say before that, and then maybe even after that, like two things that really stick out in my brain whenever I think of those moments where I was like that. Growing up watching the Cinderella movie with Brandy and Whitney Houston and Bernadette Peters, I like would watch that too. And like, I don't want to age myself, but it was VCR. It was a VCR tape. And definitely you had to like rewind the tape and all this stuff. Anyway, I'm not going to age myself too much. Hello. But I would watch that until like my eyes would bleed. So that was one that I was like, oh, I love it. And then also when I was, I want to say in 5th grade, the corresponding high school would put on, performances, and they did Oklahoma and they did Kiss Me Kate. And I loved it so much. Like, I'm not kidding. I would go home and be like to my mom, I'm like, can we go to the library so I can get the CD of the album? So like in 6th grade, I just had this, like, I was obsessed with Oklahoma, like golden age musicals. I just was obsessed. Like I knew every word to Oklahoma and every word to Kiss Me Kate. And I was like, I love it so much. So that's really when I was like, oh, I really, really want to do that. That is really cool and really special. So.
And your parents are probably watching all these like other kids like jam out to like these like generic artists, like pop artists and stuff.
Like, whose child is, that's not our child. Where did you come from?
Yeah, like what is our child listening to?
Yeah, 100%.
Interesting.
I'm like, we're here. I'm out here.
Yeah. When did someone like point out that you could sing? I'm interested.
My mom told me a story when I was like in preschool. So maybe I was 4. I think I would just, sing just to myself at play dates or something. And the parents would say to my mom, like, oh, she can actually, like, she has pitch. She actually is not off key. So that's got to mean something, right? Like I wasn't painfully awful. So maybe I could sing. I think I could just follow the melody really well or like be on pitch of the song. And so they're like, wow, she actually has a good voice. So I think around that time.
It's interesting because like people are like, well, I don't really know if like someone like pointed out that I can sing. I just like went and did something.
I was just like, take me or leave me.
Yeah.
Like,
yes. Oh my God. Now I was listening to that song on repeat the other day.
Oh my God. You know what? It's so funny you said that. I went down. I'm sorry. I have an obsession with Nicole Scherzinger. Not to like get really off track. But if you're out there watching this, her version of when she played Maureen at the Hollywood Bowl for Rent, she ate that up, in my opinion. I thought and I was just watching. It's so funny because I just was watching that on YouTube yesterday.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to go watch that on YouTube
Becca,
too.
Becca, do yourself a favor. Go watch that on YouTube after this, please.
I'm going to be like replaying it on repeat. The views are going to go up.
I don't think you are going to be very surprised, pleasantly surprised. She's divine.
Yes. So growing up, how did you work on becoming a well-rounded theater performer and like kind of like get into everything theater related and continue strengthening yourself as a theater performer?
That's a good question. I think that I still don't think I am I'm still working on how to be a musical theater actor and be polished. I just think I tend to be a harsh critic on myself. But I will say that growing up, I never had any training, vocal training or anything. And it was more so just my ear would just hear certain artists and emulate those artists, probably not the healthiest way. And so after that, and I just managed to do theater in the area, children's theater in the area, and they weren't fixated on making sure you were technically great. They just were like, oh, if it sounds good. So I think I sort of just was like cheating or like faking it till you make it for a while. And then I went to AMDA.
I saw that.
Yeah. And that was the first time I had real like training, we're there at like 9 a.m. until I think like 5, and just like hardcore, just like technique and vocal technique and acting technique. It really was only until then, which is why I went, because I just was like, okay, I know I have like raw abilities, but I really want them to be more polished. And I was beginning to feel a little bit insecure. Like I could do it, but I definitely didn't think I could withstand like an 8 times a week. And my voice, I didn't feel like I could count on it. And I didn't feel like I could navigate my own instrument. Like I just was like, okay, if this comes out, it comes out, like a hope and a prayer. And like, I was just like, I'm a little tired of that, because I want to go into this audition or sing this song and not reach the end of the song and get tired, or not know where to place things, all of these sensibilities. And so it really was until I went to AMDA that I was like understanding, like even just like the lexicon of like what it means to be a performer, like just the verbiage that we use, like what is placement, what is breath support, what is resonance, what is headboard. That was like a foreign language to me. I didn't know. I was just like, oh, I didn't know that's what I was doing with my voice, belting. Like I didn't know these things. So I feel like around then, and then after that, everything that I did, even when I did Les Mis, it was still a learning experience. I just was still around actors and like hearing the things that they would say. And then that's just kind of the trajectory. Even now, like I'm hearing things. And so you're just like a sponge in that way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. What made you choose to go to AMDA specifically as opposed to other schools? Because I know I worked at Pantages for a bit as an usher, and I knew
You worked where?
At Hollywood Pantages as an usher. And I knew a lot of people who went to AMDA in LA. So I know it's a really good, reputable school, but I'm just curious, what made you choose AMDA as opposed to another school?
Yeah, so my story is unique, as everyone else's is on this planet, as it should be. But I went to high school, and then I went to the new school. For those that are out there, the new school is in New York City, and there's different branches. Some of you probably are more familiar with Parsons. That's a branch of the new school. That's like the design school. But I went to Eugene Lang, which was like liberal arts. And so it was English and papers and studying a lot. And I went there for a year. And I went there because I knew I wanted to perform at the time, but I just was like, I was thinking like, maybe I'll just go, and then on the side, I can still audition. I wasn't so sold on going to like a 4-year like conservatory, because I was like, I kind of want to audition. But then I didn't really do much. And then Eugene Lang was really cool, but I don't know if it was for me, because I wanted to be active if I was going to go to school at all. So after Eugene Lang, I took a gap year. And then when I took the gap year, I did like a couple of shows regionally. Like I did Dreamgirls at this regional house in Connecticut, ironic. Yeah, so that was cool. And then I did like a really, really rundown children's tour where they probably exploited us more than they should have. But I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus. But anyway, humble beginnings. So I did this children's tour that same gap year. And then after that, I was like, that same point that I made just a bit ago, I was like, okay, I'm doing these things, but I'm not feeling sturdy in my technique. I want more technique. And so then AMDA came about, and I was like, that's kind of perfect. Like I've already gone to school for a year. I took a gap year. So it seems like instead of starting fresh and going to a 4-year program, AMDA's kind of par for the course, because it's like a 16-month thing. It's like a very boot camp feel, in and out. And I was like, that's kind of perfect for me. So that's kind of how it happened.
That's really interesting, because I feel like it's like not really like the 16-month thing isn't really like how most theater schools work, but it's like kind of a different path.
Yeah. And I think, for me, as I said, it was unique because there were a multitude of ages, but for me, since I wasn't coming in as a freshman. I think when you're fresh out of high school, you might have you kind of like are not, as you should. I mean, you're still like, what am I doing? So it's like, I was kind of past that point. And I was like, for me, I was like, with where I am at this stage of my life, I can focus instead of being like, okay, I'm a freshman, so many new faces. I want to be social, but I also want to like all of these things. So I think that's also why it worked out for me and why I felt like I was in a good place.
It's so important to mention the coming out of high school thing because like you're still like 17, 18 when you're coming out of high
Baby.
school. It's so young and people treat you like an adult automatically when you get to college and you're like, what? Like
Ridiculous.
I don't even like I'm just learning how to live by myself right now and stuff like that.
I mean, the system is so, there's so much about these systems that really are perplexing to me, but yeah, I just think like they even say like your prefrontal cortex doesn't even develop until you're 25. And that's like your like decision making. So I'm like, how are we supposed to graduate high school and know what we want to do with ourselves?
With the rest of our lives. Yeah.
Make it
Basically.
make sense, please, somebody.
They're like, everyone come up with the major you want when you're 18. And this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Good luck.
Bye. Sink or
Bye.
swim.
Have fun. Have fun.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yes, it is absolutely ridiculous. So I want to get into Les Mis and Dreamgirls, but
Sure.
I love talking about regional theater. So what is a regional theater show that you think has helped you the most in like to grow and to be able to take on Les Mis and Dreamgirls?
Woo. I don't think anything actually prepared me for Broadway itself, because it's like you can do all this training, but until you're in it, it's kind of, it's hard. Like you have to just do it and then like be out there and see, you know, how you land. But there obviously are elements that can assist in that process. But I would say, and I always make this joke that I went to like the Dreamgirls school. Like I didn't go to like a full college, but I went to Dreamgirls school because when I was in high school, I want to say, I mentioned that I did a lot of community theater. So I did community theater. We did a version of Dreamgirls, and I was like one of the, I'm sure you're familiar with Dreamgirls. Yeah. I was like a girl group in the beginning that's competing against the dreams. Like I was one of the like passerbys, and then I did it regionally, as I mentioned. And then I ended up doing it in the West End. So I definitely think it was ironic that I had already, it was always a dream show of mine, but the fact that I had already done it twice and then had time to do it in the West End, which I'm not going to lie to you, that turnaround was crazy. I had like 2 weeks of rehearsal to do it on the West End. So
oh my goodness,
talk about feeling prepared, because I feel like I had done that show. It wasn't like, like I knew the show, like front and backward, movie version, stage version, you name it. And it's because I had done it regionally and because I had done it in community theater. So I think that's like a pretty like spot on example as to how doing it regionally affected me later down the line when it was like crunch time. And it's like, okay, you literally, I had 4 days I basically was doing a show in California. I was doing Prince of Egypt.
Oh my goodness.
And when Prince of Egypt closed, I had 4 days to get all my stuff to move to London in 4 days. It was crazy. So 4 days, you're saying bye to your family, you're packing, you're getting your stuff. Like there's visa stuff that you need to do. So you're like, you know, any like governmental building, you're there for like hours. So that was like a solid day. So I had 3 days. And then I got to London, and then it was like you're jet lagged, but then you also need to learn the show in 2 weeks. So like I definitely was grateful that I knew the show, you know.
Wow, that is a very quick turnaround, and that's what impresses me so much about theater performers, that you will work with under any circumstance, really under crazy circumstances.
Yeah,
it's insane. And I'm gonna get more into Dreamgirls, but first I want to talk about Les Mis. What was your audition process like for Les Mis? When did you get your audition?
Yeah. So yeah, Les Mis, I was at AMDA. I was in my 4th semester at AMDA. 4th semester, you're able to audition. So it's like they encourage you to audition. You actually have your schedule changed from afternoon classes to now evening classes. So the idea is that it's structured in a way in which during your afternoons you're auditioning, nighttime you go to class. Genius.
Yeah.
So at this time, I had a panel night, which is almost like a mock audition night. They want you to become more comfortable in the audition process. And through this panel night, there were agents there, and you're not really supposed to get picked up by an agent, but you can. And so I was fortunate enough to have been picked up by an agent, and then they were freelancing with me. And they sent me for 2 things during the time that we could audition now during the days. And it was Evan Hansen, and it was Les Mis. And this was Evan Hansen before. I mean, this was like the very beginning. Obviously, I did not get Evan Hansen. And I just, in the same week, I was like, okay, like, I'm just saying yes to these things. Like, it's just practice. Like, never in a million years did I think it would go far. So I went in for the Les Mis audition, and it was very preliminary. And a couple weeks later, I like put it out of my mind. Like, I just was like, okay, that happened. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, you have a callback for it. And I was like, what? No way. Me? No. And did the callback. And then the next thing, they're like, you have another audition, like a 3rd one. And I was like, okay, this is getting real. And now I'm getting nervous. Like, I was so calm, cool, and collected, because I just wasn't really taking it all that seriously. Like, I was like, I'm still like in school. This was like my 2nd real audition, like Broadway audition. No way, right? And then next thing I know, I'm in the finals. And it was a very nerve-wracking day. I just remember, like, the room was just, there's so many people in that room. It's so intimidating. To all my performers out there, my heart goes out to you for those audition experiences. Like, it's a beautiful thing, because like, wow, I'm in the room. Like, these people wouldn't all be here if it wasn't important. So it's a beautiful thing to make it that far. But then the pressure just like increases, and you're just kind of like, oh my God, all these eyes on me. Like, woo, it's a little nerve-wracking. No pressure, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of, that's just that final callback. And I remember they're giving me a lot of notes, and I just was like, oh my God, I just hope I'm like executing these notes right. And like, and just, again, I did the best that I could. And then I think like a week later, I had a meeting with my agent. And then as I'm there, they just like came out, and they're like, well, you got it, you booked it. And I was like, oh my God. I like called my mom. I think I texted my mom, because like, as he was talking, I was texting my mom. When he was like, you got it, I was like, really? Because my agent kept talking, and I was like, Mom, I think it was in like gibberish, probably. I was just trying to text her at the same time.
Just like a bunch of like how people like type on Twitter or something, like in like all caps.
Literally, that was me for sure. So
yes, I mean, I can imagine how exciting that is. Had you seen Les Mis before?
No.
So you had never seen Les Mis?
I had never seen Les Mis.
Wow.
That was not a show. Like, so much respect and reverence for that incredible piece of musical theater history, but I never saw myself in that show. That was never a show that I ever saw myself in. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So it was probably like more of a like, okay, I gotta like study what this show is about, than like oh, I've been a fan of this show for so long, because you weren't a fan. So it was like, you're looking at it in a different way.
It's true. I was not super well versed on it. And I definitely, like, obviously, it, I wasn't completely blind to the story, but I know that's a lot of people's like dream show. So I wasn't in that category. So yeah, to your point, it was definitely like reading up as much as I could. And then obviously when I did the show, they had me see it, a bunch of times and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a learning curve.
Do you think it helped you through the rehearsal process and making Éponine your own to have not been a like huge fan of the show before?
That's a really good question. I'm sure, like, I think I felt like I was shot out of such a giant cannon at that point that I don't even know if it crossed my mind to make it my own. I just was like trying to and I think at that time, like, when you're really young and it's your first job like that, I mean, at least I can only speak from experience. You really are just trying to, like, maybe a little too much, be like a bit of a people pleaser. And you're like, not so much, at least me at that point in my life, like I was just a little like shell shocked to even be there. So I was just doing my best to like listen to what they were telling me. And like, they did have an interpretation of Éponine because obviously it's such a well-oiled machine. But then at some point it is just me because it's my voice, like it's my tone, It's my timbre. So I think subconsciously I was making it my own just because like I'm me. And that's just, obviously they hired me because I sounded the way I sounded. And when I was singing, it wasn't like I was trying to emulate somebody. I just was singing like myself. So I think that's how I lended my own take on to the role.
And I think people have like grown into, I think Broadway fans have like grown into over the past like maybe even 4 or 5 years, just like appreciating how different people play characters that they love differently, more so than they did maybe like 10 years ago. Maybe like 10 years ago, I feel like they wanted everyone to be a carbon copy of these like well-loved characters. And like now everyone's like, okay, I want to see how different people play my favorite characters.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think that's how it should be. I mean, it's art and it morphs and it shapeshifts.
Exactly.
So it's like, I think that's a really cool thing. And I don't think like if, if you're a painter or an artist, it's like, is Picasso going to be a carbon copy of Van Gogh? Like we don't,
Exactly.
it's abstract. I think if you're walking around a museum and you're looking at art, you're not like, oh, that one's like that way, but I wish that one was more like, it's just like your own interpretation. So just let people, like, I'm just a big fan of just letting people do their thing, as long as you're telling the story and you have stakes and you are fighting for something, like, do you, boo, like live your life.
I'm super curious to know, because I am definitely a huge fan of all the Les Mis music, the Les Mis storyline. So are you more of a Cosette or an Éponine in real life?
In my life?
Yeah, in real life.
Oh, in my life, that was a Les Mis reference.
Yeah, that was definitely a Les Mis.
Do you see the subconscious really starting to come out?
Yes.
I'm more of a Cosette or an Éponine. I think I have tendencies of both. Like they're both archetypes that I can channel. Like sometimes I'm a little Cosette and then sometimes I'm a little Éponine. That just depends on the day. Like I can be demure and sweet and romantic. And then I can very much just be like sturdy and grounded and like, feeling a little feisty but also heart, because obviously Éponine is still heart-centered. It manifests in different ways. So I think I'm a complex person. I like to think. So I think I have traits of both of those characters for sure.
I'm curious, did you notice right away that people were more cheering for Éponine, even though they know the storyline, more cheering for Éponine to be with Marius than Cosette to be with Marius? I feel like that's how it is, always.
I guess. I don't even know if I think everyone will root for an underdog, So I think it makes sense that, those in the audience would be rooting for Éponine because it's just so tragic. And obviously Cosette has had her own tragedy, so she deserves love too. But I think there's something when you see a woman pining and almost like in a like puppy dog desperate way, there's something about that where you're like, oh, I really want her to win.
I mean, and On My Own connects so deeply with like everyone.
You're like, so screw everybody else.
Yeah.
Éponine needs a win. She needs this, you guys. She needs.
Please, like I know how it ends.
Yeah.
But every time I'm like, please, I need this time to like change.
Yeah.
where you want to make a movie or a play or a musical change. Those are the best plot lines. Do you remember your Broadway debut, or did you just completely black out during it? Because I know people who are like, yeah, I remember every moment. And then there's some people who are like, no, I don't remember anything.
I definitely do remember like start and finish. But I will say after, like, once you've done a show for almost 2 years, the days do get a little like, it's blended. So I'm like, was that my debut or was that like week 8? Or like, so like there are certain things that I remember, like I remember being nervous and walking out and like the flowers and like lovely cards and things. And I do remember points, like one of my really good friends was in the audience. And after I sang On My Own, I think he threw like a rose on the stage or something, like, yeah. And then I also just remember like, it was a horrific ice storm that day, like record breaking. Love that. Yeah, it's so typical.
Yeah, love that.
And so I remember like having this like cute little like black pantsuit and like wanting to like walk out and be cute, and it was freezing. And I remember there was so much water on the ground that when I stepped, I thought it was concrete, but it was a puddle. And it was like up to my like ankle in water. Like I stepped directly in a puddle that was like up to my ankle in water. And my feet were like freezing cold. So it's like little things like that I remember. So yeah, it was definitely those little like sensory things I definitely remember from that night, of course.
Just you're like, great, I'm gonna get frostbite tonight.
Yeah,
Like,
that'll for sure allow me to remember this night. That's really
so fun. The stand-up moment of that night.
100%.
Was the ice. Oh, weather. We love weather.
Yes, H2O.
So had you ever played the same part 8 times in a week on stage before, and how did you prepare for that? Because that is incredibly challenging, especially when you're playing Éponine and singing on my own 8 times a week.
I'd done it 8 times, but never for 2 years. So I think the longest run up until that point, probably under 3 months, maybe. So yeah, I don't have too much to say about that, but it was a learning curve for sure. And that's another thing that you can't really prepare for doing 8 shows a week for 2 years. And just being very human and candid, I would be lying to say that it didn't come with its own trials and tribulations at times, just for your psyche. I think, you know, you do too much of anything that's going to make you feel a little bit like, woo, a little bit out there. But obviously it's still a blessing that you get to do what you love. But yeah, I think nothing could really prepare you, but I will say my voice did a pretty cool thing past like maybe the 4 month. I'm going to be a little bit naughty and say that 4 months in, I was very studious and like diligent. My vocal warm-ups, I was like the very good girl, like coming in early, doing my vocal warm-ups. And then past the 4 month mark, I was not warming up. I was not warming up. I did have an ensemble track in the beginning, like before Éponine. I was one of the lovely ladies and a factory worker. Oh. So when I did sing, that was kind of, I don't know if I should say this, but it was a little bit of a vocal warm up, because I started singing, and when I'm singing out loud with the ensemble, I'm like, oh, it's feeling good today. So that was kind of my unofficial vocal warm up. So sorry if anyone's mad about that out there. Just being real.
I mean, I think that's kind of impressive though, that you managed to sing that song, because it's not an easy song.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully I'm not paying for it now. Like, hopefully there's nothing there, but I will say, you know, it is almost like muscle memory.
Yeah.
And I just was fortunate, and it just would tend to be there. But I did get really sick. Like, I was sick for like 2 weeks once. I think it was like 8 months into the show. I got a really bad like flu or some sort of like upper respiratory infection. And I was out for like 2 weeks, and I completely had lost my voice. And that was when I remember I cracked on stage. It was humiliating. I did that. I would get to the note, world is full of happiness that I have never known. And it just was like, fell apart. And I was out of the show. So that was like the only time that I experienced like really like my voice going for that part. But it's life. It happens. Yeah. We move on, you know, nobody asks to be sick. So it was just something that happened.
You're like, so this is what happens when you're performing the shows 8 times a week for 8 months.
Yeah. I was like, okay. Uh-oh, I'm going to be a good girl now.
You're like,
maybe
I'm not
that was my karma.
I mean, it just goes to show that like, no matter how incredible theater performers are and singers are, like no one's invincible at any given moment.
Human? You mean we're still human?
Yeah, you're still human.
Depends. Exactly. Actually, I don't know. Sometimes I'm a human. Other days, I don't really know what I am.
Maybe not some days.
Most days, I don't know what I am.
Some days you can be a superhuman out there on
half
stage.
Alien. You know, it's a hybrid situation. Who knows?
Yes. Oh my God, I watched. I'm not gonna go into the show I watch about aliens, because
you have to
go into it all day. Oh, I watched the show Roswell on CW.
Roswell.
And I highly recommend it. It's so
good.
I'm
an alien. I love that. I'm gonna check that out.
You're gonna watch and be like, definitely one of them.
That's our homework. You have to watch Take Me or Leave Me, and I will watch Roswell. Is it Roswell?
Roswell, New Mexico. It's a reboot. of a
Perfect.
show.
Okay, that's our
back in the
homework,
day.
Becca.
But it's on Netflix. It's on Netflix right now, on CW, kind of.
I will definitely watch that.
So you'll be like, okay, I am a superhuman. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So West End and Dreamgirls, I want to talk about that. What made you want to audition for a West End show and go to London and perform?
I never thought about it, honestly. Like, I wasn't like, oh, I want to work in the West End. It just sort of popped up. I think I had auditioned for it previously before. I think, if I'm remembering this correctly, I think they weren't sure if it was going to go to Broadway, and then there was a possibility of West End. And I had auditioned for it, and I didn't get it the first time. And then it went to the West End. And then I think it was in the West End for like a year or so, and I really put it out of my mind. And then it came up again. And I remember my agent saying, okay, do you want to go back in? And I kind of was like, I could, at that time, I'm a little prideful. And I was like, well, they didn't want me the first time, so why do you think they're going to want me now? And he's like, just go in. I'm like, you're right. Like, I love that show, and I would do anything to be in that show. So I was like, fine, I'll go back in. And so I did go back in for the audition. And this time around, I got it. So everything does happen for a reason. I think the timing was, in retrospect, the timing was perfect. Because I also think if I had done it the first time around, that was really close after Les Mis. And I think I needed that break. I think I needed that time to just decompress after 2 years of like dedicating my life to that show and that schedule. I needed a little reset. And so, it was in the West End, and it just happened, so.
Wow. So had you ever been to London before, and was it a little nerve-wracking to just like pack up your life and go overseas?
Never had I been to London. No. So this was like a completely new experience for me. I was really lucky though, because one of my nearest and dearest best friends of all time, she lived in London. And it was really great to have her out there. I didn't really feel as alone. And so that was really nice to have like a point person out there. I got really lucky. So I wasn't too terrified, because I knew I could call her for anything. And she's just like she's like my other, my sidekick, my rib. And we had a really great time. And of course, when you first get there, it's a little bit like daunting. Maybe that was just the jet lag, but I was just like, ooh, this is a lot to take in, but it's beautiful. And I just think anywhere across the sea I love Europe. I love England, and gorgeous. It was beautiful. I was really, where they put me up was really close to the theater. So I was very spoiled. I was like only a few minutes away in terms of the walk. And I will say, a lot of people will ask me like, how was London? And my biggest regret, probably, I was so fixated on the show, and it was a very taxing show, that I didn't travel as much as I wish that I did, or even just like explored. I really do. Of course, now I can say that because I'm on the outside looking in, because when I was doing the show, I was very tired. My voice was tired, my body was tired. So it's a lot easier said than done, but I wish I was a little bit more explorative and adventurous in terms of like, the day off, or maybe before the show. But I did what I needed to do at the time. And I guess, it's so easy to look back and want to do those things. But I just know in the moment, I was just like, I need to just relax and just not speak. And
like, you're like, I want to take care of my voice. Like, it's so hard to sing these songs. Like, speaking of singing hard songs 8 times a week.
I know. I mean, and this was a different beast than Les Mis, because obviously On My Own was very hard, but I feel like there was like 8 On My Owns in Dreamgirls. Like, there was so many. Like, I was a constant. Deena is there throughout the whole show. Yeah. Whereas Éponine, it's like, it's pretty spread out. And then like I died halfway. I mean, or not even halfway. Like less than half in the second act. You don't see me the rest of the show. So it was definitely a different beast, and it took more endurance and stamina and these things. So I was tired,
and more movement on stage. I feel
more
like
movement. I mean, we were not doing armography in Les Mis. Like, we were not doing, like, there was none of that in Les Mis.
So you're like learning how to like dance and sing at the same time, kind of.
Yeah, for
To an
sure.
extent, and that changes how you like take care of your voice and how you like use your voice. I feel like
All of it, yeah.
wow. So
Yeah.
your rehearsal process, how like it was 2 weeks. How do you like get to the point of being like, okay, I'm ready after 2 weeks? Because even with your previous experience doing Dreamgirls, I feel like it'd be like, okay, so I'm gonna be in a Western production of Dreamgirls 8 times a week and playing a lead. Like, am I ready after 2 weeks of rehearsal?
No, you never feel ready. I didn't. At least at that point though, you have to just be nice to yourself. You're like, I know my lines, I know my blocking, I know my choreography. Yeah, and then you're very much aware that this is going to be an evolution. It's your first performance out of hundreds more. So I know that there's so much gravity on that opening night because it is like a debut, but you got to put things into perspective and be like, okay, just because it's my first doesn't mean I have to put so much weight and gravity on perfection in this one night. Sure, the stakes are high, but you're going to keep growing and you're going to continue to keep finding choices, and she's going to grow. This character is going to grow and flourish. So I think I was nice to myself and I was like, I'm going to do the best with 2 weeks. And I also know that this isn't the last. This is going to be a journey. It's not a sprint, so
Yes.
it's not, it's a marathon. So that was kind of my mentality at that point.
Do you think you were nicer to yourself when you were in Dreamgirls versus Les Mis when you made your Broadway debut?
I learned so much from Les Mis and that I brought into Dreamgirls. I learned a lot of what not to do. I learned a lot about myself, about what I need, about what I don't need, how to vocalize for myself, how to be more assertive, how to, you have to stand up for yourself and speak up, and also just be kinder to yourself. I think I showed up with a lot more compassion for myself this time around. Doesn't mean that it's like a fixed science and that I was this perfect person. Like, please, I still like it keeps growing. Like, the next thing that I do, whatever that is, I'll still take things that I learned from Les Mis and from Dreamgirls with me. Like, it doesn't stop,
Yeah, and every performer is their own worst critic in this industry. It's like, because like me as an audience member, I'm always like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. And people are like, no, I was off on this like 1 millisecond of this song, and so I'm like, true. When?
It's like, true. Yeah, I definitely can attest to that. It's like, I don't know if I've ever, my mom will tease me too and be like, Brennyn, I don't think I've ever heard you perform and you're like, that was it. That was the money right there. Like, I don't think there's ever been one time where I was like, I couldn't have done any better.
Oh my goodness.
I don't think one. Yeah.
It's just, you're like, nope, I met like this 1 millisecond got to me. And
always something. It's like, oh, I liked my tone in that first half, but I liked the emotion. But then in the second half, I liked my voice, but I didn't have emotion. Like, it's all encompassing. It's a lot.
You're like, stop beating yourself up.
It's true. No, it's true.
What was your favorite song to perform in Dreamgirls and why? I'm curious.
I love performing Heavy. That was my favorite number because it's so theatrical and there's so much drama. And we also had this like 5-second costume change, which is like musical theater, just like gold, in my opinion, because it's like we're behind this like shimmery curtain, like all gold. And we literally have like, we start on one gown, but there's a gown underneath. I don't know if I should be giving up all the magic, but we are wearing 2 dresses at the same time. We go behind a curtain and we also have like 2 different wigs, and we take off one wig, there's one underneath, and then a whole different dress. And then it literally, I think the count was like, I'm not going to lie, I want to say 15 seconds. I think it's a 15-second change. So then we bust through the curtains again, like the little shimmery curtains, and we have a whole new ensemble on. And it's just like, I love that song. I love the confrontation. bit of that song when Effie and Deena and Laurel have their like little like dialogue, and Effie thinks that that Deena is cheating, you know, Curtis is cheating on her with Deena, and then Effie gets kicked out of the group. I just love the stakes, and I love all the dynamics of that heavy number. I loved doing that every night.
It's just like what magical theater, or what musical theater is, magical.
100%. Like it's everything, you know? Like in one moment. I love doing that number.
Yes, because like, I mean, costume changes, whenever you see a costume change happen that quick on stage, it's like magic. You're thinking, you're in the audience and you're like, how do they do that? But you don't overthink it. You're just like, I want to see it again to like kind of figure out how they do it. But and then you're just like, I kind of just want to see it again because it was so spectacular.
Yeah, it's true. It was really, really cool to be a part of it. It was really cool.
How do you think Broadway audiences and West End audiences differ?
They're quieter. They're much more well-behaved.
That's what I've heard.
Which I don't know if that's always a good thing, because then you're like, do they hate it? Like, is that the general consensus that they just didn't like it? But I've learned that it's because it's like an etiquette thing. Like they're not gonna whoa and scream the way we do in America. They're much more reserved. And a friend of mine in London, she played Effie with me as Deena. We went to see a show once, and like she and I are in the audience, and we're like, whoa, like screaming, because we also know what it's like to be up there, and we're just like, and we're the only one, and like me and her are just like looking, and the whole audience is sitting, and we're like awkwardly like looking around, and we're like, okay, let's just have a seat there, because and like this couple behind us, like they were like, that was just like, they were like mad. We're like, oh my God, like we didn't know. It was so funny. They were like very offended that we were like, I'm so sorry, like we're performers, like we're so used to like rooting for our friends after. They're like, that was ghastly, like that was a terrible accent, but they're were like not
Americans.
They were not happy.
These American theater fans.
These Americans. Yeah. I think they even made us think, like they were like, oh, I think they said like, gosh, this is like the Donald Trump effect or something. Like I was like, oh, no. They went there. They went there.
Oh no. I was
like, great. I'm being compared to Donald Trump. That's great.
No.
I was like,
I'm glad that I know that secret before, because I haven't been to a London show yet or a West End show yet. So I'm glad that I know that secret, so I'm not like just like embarrassing myself and cheering loudly during the whole show.
This can be a cautionary tale, because
oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be like yelling and embarrassing myself, and people would be like, who is she and why is she doing that? I even watched like the Wicked curtain call video, I think yesterday, and it's different than the Wicked curtain call in the US, because I think they like walk out stage instead of, they like kind of speed walk out on stage.
I didn't even know that.
Running at curtain call. And wait, that's because they run. Like Glenda and Elphaba like run at curtain call for US. Yeah. So I was like, okay, so they even toned down the curtain calls.
Wow. I didn't know that.
It's crazy. So for roles you play, you've kind of addressed this, but for these roles you've played, what's like one vocal health trick that you've learned?
No, I like that. Vocal health trick. Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. Do you see the process?
Yes. Yes.
Whenever my voice is feeling like a little swollen, or like if I'm just trying to find the placement, you get a cup, you fill it with water halfway, and you get like one of those thick straws, like the ones that are like a little bit, like not like a normal like small straw, like the ones that you know, like boba tea.
Yes.
One of those straws, that's a good straw. And you blow bubbles into the water, and you have to keep the bubbles even. So like they can't be like splashing up, they need to be like even and leveled. And you just hum the like melody of your song, and you just hum it like it's like I can't really do it right now, but you essentially would be like you're humming, or like you're blowing, and like It
Ooh.
relaxes the vocal folds. And you can also just find, like, I'll hum, if there's like a very high note, like I'll hum that, like, world is, like, for instance, the world is full of happiness that I have never known. I would just do like, ooh, ooh, I never, ooh, and then I would sing it out loud after. So I do ooh, known after, and it helps you find the placement too.
Oh, that is very
Yeah.
interesting.
It is very, there's something about the, I'm not a scientist, never claimed to be, but there is something about like the pressure. There's a term for it, which has escaped me, but there is a term for it. And there's something with the pressure, the air pressure, that does something magical and wonderful for your voice. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So I've seen a lot about people wanting a Dreamgirls revival recently. Why do you think that Dreamgirls is a show that people want to be revived, and why do you think that it should be revived, whether it's on Broadway or West End?
I honestly am going to keep it simple. I just think it's a fun show. Like, I just think it encapsulates what it means to go to the theater. I mean, there's glam, there's glitz, there's, um, you know, powerful women that have like strong like character arcs and trajectories, which I'm always in favor of. Also, just the music is just incredible. Like, it's powerful, soulful pop music. There's dancing. Um, you know, there are so many themes that we can relate to just as people. It's like insight into the music business, which is always like fascinating for people.
Yes.
So I think there's a lot of points and there's a lot of reasons why people would love to see that show come back, and why it's really beautiful to watch, and why it's special to watch as well.
Now, this is my last Dreamgirls question, but I'm curious, since you weren't a fan of, you didn't really know much about Les Mis before. You were cast in Les Mis, but you knew about Dreamgirls. Was it different stepping into Dreamgirls on West End as a lead than stepping in to Les Mis on Broadway as a lead, because you loved the show?
Do you just mean because I was more familiar with
Yeah,
Dreamgirls, or like the process?
because you were more familiar with Dreamgirls, and you were a fan of the show.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely a different process for numerous reasons, but I mean, a lot of similarities there. I think when you do any show, maybe this time around, I felt a little. I think I mentioned this before. I felt a little a bit more at ease. Not like I wasn't. I still had my own hangups and I was nervous, but I knew what to expect a little bit more. I was a little bit older at that time. I mean, older than when I made my Broadway debut. I was like a baby. So you just feel a little bit more seasoned in that way, but still growing. And I also, yeah, I just think it was an overall different experience for different reasons. One of the main ones being that I've already done a show like that before, in terms of like a broad, like that magnitude rather. So I kind of knew what to expect. I knew what was sort of being asked of me. But they're just such different shows too. So I don't know if I'm answering this question properly, but I think there were some similarities, but also some differences. But nevertheless, I still was learning no matter what.
Yeah,
That makes sense. I don't know if I made any sense there.
I mean, I feel like even if you know the show backward and forward, you're still learning no matter what.
Yeah. So. Like, I definitely felt more comfortable because I was more familiar with the show, for sure. But I also felt more comfortable just because I knew what it meant to do a show at that volume. Like, I knew what it was going to be like for rehearsals and what was being asked of me and that whole thing as well.
Yes. So I'm curious, what is a role that you would love to take on stage now in present day?
This is like the number one question. And I feel like I give the most cliche answer that everyone says, but I really want to just originate.
Yes.
Yeah. I always say I want to do like Fresh Prince the musical, and like I want to be Hillary or something, or
Ooh.
If they were to ever do, I don't know, maybe like Aaliyah, the musical, or
Okay.
that could be fun. I don't know. But you know what's funny? You probably don't even know this show, but another show when I was younger that opened my eyes. There's a show called Brooklyn the Musical. Are you familiar with that at all?
Wait, is that the is Brooklyn the one that was is that the Eden one?
Yeah.
The one that Eden does? Yeah.
Not many people know it, which is like a travesty to me, but it was my favorite show growing up. Like everyone loved Wicked and I was just obsessed with Brooklyn. And I would maybe for, I don't think I could do it for a year because that music is hard.
It is hard, yeah.
Very hard. Maybe a little limited engagement thing. I would like to do that show because I just love that music so much.
So at Eden.
At Karen Olivo, at Eden, at Ramona Keller, please, somebody.
Please. Yeah.
Or they can just do it and I would just watch it every chance I could get.
You're just like, I'll be in the audience every night. It's fine.
Full groupie. Full groupie.
Yes. But let's manifest you being in it.
Sure.
Yes.
Becca.
I'm all for manifesting.
Yes, me too.
So I mean, I love that answer because I love when people say that, like, there's so many good roles, but new things are so needed.
I agree. And I'd like to put my thumbprint on something, like fully take artistic liberties and like set something as me, not feel like I have to follow in anyone else's footsteps and just like, do my thing.
Exactly. I want to cover, because I saw Marvelous Miss Maisel on your IMDb. So is acting for camera different than acting on stage?
Yes and no. I think the elements are still the same. You have to keep the stakes high. The technique is still the same, but I just think the mediums are different. So instead of being on a stage where you are projecting to like people all the way up in, the mezzanine or up in the orchestra balcony, down in the orchestra, up in the balcony. For camera, it's more intimate. So they are getting close-ups, tight shots to your eyes. You have more liberty with what story you're telling with your eyes because people can actually see your eyes. You can make a bit more subtle gestures on television film that are being captured by this machine called a camera. So, and that, I think more so from a technical standpoint, it's different. But I think ultimately the technique itself, in terms of having an objective, what's your character doing? Who are they? What are their relationships? All of these things, that stays the same.
Yeah, and it's also when you're filming for TV, it's like 10 different takes versus like just when you're on stage every night, you just do a full run through of the show one time.
Yeah, just the element of post-production that does not exist in theater land. So what you see is what you get in theater world, but in TV, obviously, there's post, there's editing, there's splicing, and there's things that directors might take out and put in, So you sort of do something and then you just wash your hands and give it to a director to make it look good. Whereas like, it's almost like you're your own director when you're on stage, because it's just you up there. And obviously, TV and film, they're long days. You're there for like hours and, and for stage, you might have a long day, but that's your tech week where they're putting the lights and the staging and all of the props and the set together. So you're there for a long time, but that doesn't last. For TV and film, it's like if you're filming an episode, you're gonna have long days for like months,
Yes, exactly. And you maybe do have the long days just for like a month with rehearsal, but I feel like that's only really if like the whole cast is rehearsing at the same time.
Yeah, no, yeah. And obviously it's changing every day. You have different material for theater. It's like you're doing that one show, for however long you're contracted. So
exactly. So who is someone that you'd love to work with in the theater industry?
Oh, I love this question. I've never really thought about this one.
Like so many.
See, this is the problem. A lot of them have passed away. So it's like tricky. You know that question where it's like 5 people that you'd like to to eat dinner with, dead or alive.
Like
it's
that.
like that question. Maybe now I would love to work with, gosh, there's so many. I love like the vets, like the ones that have come before us. So I would love to work with like Bernadette Peters on something. How fun would that be? Also like Cheryl Lee Ralph would be really cool because,
Ooh.
you know, was in Dreamgirls, one of the like originals. That could be really fun.
Yes.
Yeah, that's such a great question. I've never really thought about that. But so many, I'm sure. I'm doing such a bad job because I'm just like, my brain is not functioning, but those are two people that I would love to just be in the arena with. Like, even if I have like a baby part, I just would like to see how they work and like just be, you know, a part of
Like
that process, see them. Yeah.
Yeah, you can learn a lot from the people who you're around
100%. Yeah.
and acting around. So how do you work on, we've kind of talked about this, how do you work on self-confidence in such a tough industry? Because it is so hard.
Yeah, I love this question. I always say it's a practice, you know, it's like anything that you do, whether you're an athlete or a scientist or, I mean, you name it, you practice at what you do to get better. So self-confidence is no different. I don't know if it's a fixed science. For me, it's something that I work at every day to make sure I'm okay with me. Because I think once I'm okay with me, I don't care who's not okay with me, you know? So that means that I can walk into a room and I'm not feeling threatened or I'm not feeling like imposter syndrome. I'm like, I'm confident in me because I know that every single person on this planet has a special gift. If they want to tap into that, the choice is yours. And it doesn't, and I'm no better and I'm no lesser than anyone. Because I know I'm here. We all are here. We all exist simultaneously for a reason, in my opinion, and we all have various purposes. And so when I wake up to that purpose, that's where my self-confidence lies because I exist. So just the sole fact that I exist, and I think the sole concept of me existing as Brennyn, I think it would be arrogant to not have confidence in that.
I mean, and you're so incredible. I mean, I know that you're your toughest critic, but like those vocals that I've heard on YouTube, incredible.
Thank you. You're very, very sweet. Everyone has their own gifts, you know, and you really do. If people weren't in the idea of comparing yourself, then everyone would just be cool with what they bring to the table. But it's because we know other people exist that do something at a certain caliber, then we're like, oh, now I'm undermining me. But it's like, you just shine. Everyone should just shine in their own right. And I know it's easier said than done because social media, and I mean, there's just such a surplus of stimulation all the time. And these accounts that are boosting people up to say like, who's the most talented, who's the most beautiful, who has the best body, who's the bodybuilder, who has these followers. It's so easy, but in my opinion, that's just a facade. That's a distraction. Sure, these people exist and they're wonderful, but this hierarchy or this rating system, we're just obsessed with. We are obsessed with accolades and we are obsessed with winning and who's better and who's worse. And it's like, it's okay to just be. Like, we are fine. Like, somebody made this rule that we have to be productive and produce and be the best at what we do. I think it's capitalism to a degree, but I think we're just obsessed with like being the best, because I guess if you are the best, you'll get more money, right? So I think then you're thinking like survival. Well, if in order to make ends meet, I have to be the best. Okay, that's valid. But aside from that, like, it is okay to also exist. And I think things can come to you with ease and with grace and with fun. It doesn't always have to be like this competitive go-getting spirit. All like, there's a time and place. Don't get me wrong. Like, you don't have to be complacent, but this idea that we always have to just be so like,
keep going,
gimme. What do I get? How do I get it? Like, you're just going to have chronic dissatisfaction. Be okay with yourself. It's more about helping just even one person. That's a legacy, in my opinion. What are you doing to make the planet better? What are you doing to make the people around you better? These are accolades. you know?
Yes. Oh my gosh, that was such a well-worded answer. I don't know if I've heard anyone word that as like beautifully as you just
Oh, you were.
worded it.
I mean it because I get sad for us sometimes. Like I just have friends and I have, these people in my life and I just see how social media and these things just really, it tears you down and it just breaks my heart. And I do it sometimes. Of course, I'm not,
We all, yeah.
we all do. We're human. So it's just, if I can remind people to just keep perspective and just remember what is real, like nature is real, like these things are real. And we just put so much gravity and focus on things that are so fleeting. And it's just really messing with our brain chemistry. And I hate it.
It is. And I love social media, but social media is so toxic at the same time. So it's like,
yeah. I mean, social media is an incredible tool. Like we can't act like it's this just like, miscellaneous, just like ominous figure. Like there are people behind social media. Like it's not just this thing that has so you have to be, and you have to have intention for social media. It can be a beautiful thing and it can't be. Like, so if you're out there, unfollow people that trigger you. What are you following people for? Is it making you feel good? Is it making you feel bad? Like, what are you looking at? If your whole page is just like a bunch of models, if you are confident enough to see that every day, I'm not, so I can't, I can't like wake up and just see model after model and like be like, oh my God, I can't do that. If you can, maybe do your thing. But if you're out there and you're a little bit more fragile, be purposeful with who you're following because it can be a beautiful thing. I follow a ton of like wellness accounts and like beautiful things and messages and things that make me feel good. So you have to commandeer your own ship,
Yes. I mean, that's so important. So like to be like aware of who you're following and aware of who is maybe not the best person for you to follow on social media or the best account.
Exactly. Small baby steps that can be so much better for your mental health.
Yes. So do you have anything, whether it's theater related or not, that you'd want to promote? I saw something on your website about teaching.
Oh, yeah. Oh, before we start, because this is going to haunt me if I see this interview and I didn't say it. She's passed away, but I always would have loved to have worked with Diane Carroll.
Oh,
I just wanted to say that because she's since passed on, but like I will forever like speak wonderful things about those that have come before us. And I wouldn't be able to do what I do without her. And I just think she's so graceful and elegant and just, I would have loved to have worked with Diane Carroll. So I just want to say that because I'm going to beat myself up later and be like, why didn't you say that? But it came to my mind.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Currently, I'm as the pandemic sort of came and that whole thing, a lot of us were not, we weren't working in the forum that we, are used to. No. But for me, a gift, I mean, obviously, a lot of horrific things came out of the pandemic and those that are affected and continue to be and have lost loved ones. My heart completely goes out to you. And I empathize with you so much. It is not easy. Those that have lost jobs, those that are struggling, like, my heart completely goes out to you. Is just continues to not be easy. For me personally, I took the time to really go inward a lot and just sort of get real with myself and do a lot of like, I call it like spring cleaning, like a lot of like just emotional baggage and stuff that just was like stale and I needed to like get rid of it. So I just did a lot of that and I do that, a lot of meditation, things like that. And so within doing this, I ended up opening this door and like, I continue to just grow to love it, but I've just done a lot of teaching. And so I do some coaching, like one-on-one coaching. I also taught at like this school. And I love it because I try to be that teacher, kind of selfishly, the teacher that I sort of wish I had growing up. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I just mean, I had a lot of teachers that the main focus was the technical stuff. Like, your vocal warm-ups and acting, how to get what you want and what you need. But no one ever really taught me how to combat sort of things that we've talked about in this conversation. mental health, feelings of inferiority, imposter syndrome, nerves, like in and of itself. And so I'm super, super passionate about melding the two things together. And I work really well, like one-on-one, because I like to get to know people like on a personal level so I can really cater to their needs. But essentially, like I have my own coaching now, and it's a beautiful thing. People come to me with anything from like audition prep to just like wanting to just like get out of their own way. And some of them have material, some of them are working to help them find material. And it's just such a rewarding thing because I think we need more people on this planet that are their true, authentic, unique selves and are not afraid to just be themselves, and enough with playing small and just show up and just be and share and glow, because I do think that is contagious. And so yeah, it's super exciting, and I really love doing it. So that's like a passion project for me for sure.
And not only do you get to like help these students and help them like develop who they are and learn who they are and grow, you get to like watch them as they become the next generation's theater stars.
Yeah, hopefully,
Yeah.
and yeah, so if you're out there, I mean, it's very, you can my email is brennynlark@gmail.com. It's just my name @gmail.com. And I would love to work with you and get to know you. And yeah, no nerves, like it's all good. Like we're moving through all the self-doubt stuff, or at least I hope I could give you some tools to lead you in the right direction.
Yes.
But yeah, it's really, it brings me a lot of joy. So it's been really lovely.
And I'll put the email in the description. And where can people find you on social media to keep up with you?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just my name, Brennyn Lark, BrennynLark. That's my handle for everything. I try to keep it consistent,
Yeah.
My website is brennynlark.com. Yeah, that's basically me.
And description again and lower thirds. And last question is, what's most exciting to you about theater reopening?
So many things. I'm happy that people have jobs again, like actors, of course, but then, we have like the stage hands and the ushers.
Yes.
And costume designers. It's just hard. And so I'm really grateful that they're able to do what they love again and be compensated for that. That makes me really excited. And then for the audience members that love theater, that have missed it, and like, it's back for them to sort of have that escape again, and be able to watch something and to feel things and to heal things, and feel emotionally connected to these characters on stage, and to have that hour or 2 or 3 of being present and feeling hopefully joyful, and the memories that come with it, whether it's a person that's seeing their first Broadway show or an anniversary, or somebody's, I mean, this is very morbid of me, but like their last show that they'll ever see, it's very sentimental. So those things make me feel really excited about theater reopening.
Yes, it always means a lot. And it's like so magical to get to see a show play its first show back.
The energy, I'm sure, is
ridiculous.
Yeah.
The energy is crazy. Well, thank you so much for joining me to talk about your career today.
Thank you. This has been lovely. You're so wonderful, and you're so good at this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot. Thanks for watching this episode of Backstage with Becca B. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Becca B Talks TV. Or for more exclusive content from this interview and more, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Backstage with Becca B. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give me a 5-star rating. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!